US President Donald Trump is urging Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to accept a controversial peace proposal amid rising pressures as the 4th anniversary of the invasion now looms. For more, let's head to Sydney. We're joined by Professor Tim Harcourt from UTS. How can Europe and the United States increase their support for Ukraine at a time where, well, the US is trying to push this deal through?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it seems that the Europeans are still providing most of the aid. The USA seems just determined to get a deal done no matter what. And I mean, the question of, for Ukraine is, do you accept a deal where you lose a lot of territory, you can't join NATO, or do you tough it out and potentially lose the support of the United States, which means you're going to be in a very poor bargaining position next time around. So that's the sort of dilemma that Ukraine is facing. And it's hard to know what pressure at all has been put on Russia, who, of course, initiated the invasion and kept up the killing of innocent people in the Ukraine.
What impact has Germany's energy dependence in the past on Russia had in their support for Ukraine? We've seen a lot of these countries in Europe kind of walk very slowly, saying public things, but behind the scenes still having some sort of relationship with Russia because maybe they have to.
It's a very good point, Aaron. It's almost as though once you get away from Poland and the Baltics, countries that have experienced firsthand Russian aggression, and you move west, the less it seems there is a resolve in Europe. And I think you're right in a sense. The whole story of the unravelling of Germany's economic miracle has been partially their dependence on Russia, particularly in terms of energy. And I mean, that occurred as Germany deindustrialised and reduced its nuclear capability, and ended up, particularly when Schroeder was Chancellor, having very, very close ties with President Putin. And I think that's really caused a real dilemma with German support and Europe's overall support for the Ukraine. And also, it's contributed to Germany's decline as what was a miracle economy in the 50s, 60s and 70s after the war. They've really declined as an economic force in the world, and that's got implications geopolitically as well.
Yes, and very much because of the rise of China there too for Germany, particularly when it comes to manufacturing as well. Talk to us about the main points of that leaked 28-point draft plan proposed by Trump, because many experts say there is no way Ukraine can agree to any of this, essentially giving up 20% of their territory. The point from others who are perhaps a bit more realistic are, well, Russia's on the move. They've already got that 20% and it could be worse. What are your views on the plan?
Yeah, it seems it's this dilemma that you cede territory, they become de facto part of Russia, the Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine that sort of lean towards the Kremlin ethnically in any case, and not being able to enjoy NATO, which was the big reason for Putin undertaking this sort of behaviour. And so the dilemma is, do you cut a deal which is pretty undignified in terms of losing your territory? You're losing a lot of the Russian ethnic territories anyway, or do you tough it out? And if you tough it out, what assurances have you got from Europe and the United States and other allies that they'll have your back, given the comments we made about energy dependence, and also given the sort of reluctance for people to see an escalation, given that Russia's still got the nuclear warheads from the Soviet Union days.
You've got a feel for President Zelenskyy in a way, though, on face value, where he has fought through. It was meant to be a quick victory by Russia making their way to Kiev. Hasn't happened, but he's still so heavily reliant on the United States. He's got a bombastic president compared to the last one that he had, who was far more willing to send things through, but still did so pretty slowly. Same with Europe, same with the UK, all saying the right things, but he's on the front line there, now expected to accept a peace proposal, which many say that 28-point plan could have been written by the Kremlin.
Yeah, you got to have nothing but admiration for Zelenskyy. He stayed in Ukraine to fight. He could have fled. He could have, given up well before now. And he's been very principled. He's been, doing everything he can to get the best possible outcome for Ukraine. He's had to, fly to Washington and eat humble pie in the White House and do all these things with the Europeans in the UK. Not really sure of to what extent they'll back him, and he's had to do it pretty much on his own. Perhaps except for Poland and the Baltic states. So a lot of admiration for a leader who's also, resisted in a military sense. I mean, I've been looking at the book on the causes of war by the eminent Australian historian Geoffrey Blaney, and a lot of people, when they go to war as an aggressor like Russia, they think it's going to be over early, and many times, more often than not, it drags out, and it's not quite the same as what it is when you set it all out as a blueprint, and that's been the case here with Ukraine showing great resistance despite having one hand tied behind their back in terms of support.
The concern about the concessions, particularly when it comes to the size of Ukraine's army, is that in 3 years' time, when President Trump leaves the White House, could that just be a signal to Putin, if he's still around, of course, to steamroll into Ukraine? There's nothing they can do. They're not prepared, and it won't really be a huge surprise, but also questions about the security of Europe as well. Is this one of those things where there is no perfect answer?
Well, that's right, and you got to think if you put your hands up and let him take Ukraine, what's next? Is he going to go into Poland? What about some of those border states? It's quite clear that Ukraine's been this sort of buffer country in between Russia and the West, and the whole internal Ukrainian political economy has been basically based on who supports the West and who looks towards the East, partly on ethnic divisions, but not totally, given that Zelensky's Russian speaking predominantly. But that's been the history of Ukraine, and if you allow Putin, should he still be around to continue, who's next? Is he we're going to have the same situation with Poland? So hopefully Poland's economic strength will allow it to keep strong, but real questions asked if you don't get behind Ukraine at this stage.
How significant is the deadline set by Trump for Zelenskyy regarding the peace proposal? Over the weekend, we saw President Zelenskyy speak to the nation in about a 6-minute address saying this is the toughest situation we've ever been in. How difficult will it be for President Zelenskyy to agree? And then there's the other side, that it's in the Constitution that there has to be a vote about these sorts of things. They can't just give up territory.
Well, Ukraine's a liberal democracy, that's right. There is a vote. And even if he did make all the concessions he's been asked of him, it's still going to be pretty tough. And who knows what Putin's behaviour will be, whether he fights or whether he agrees to this deal. So that's still up in the air. And I mean, part of it, I think, is the Trump administration wanting to sort of square these things away, the Middle East, Iran, Russia, Ukraine, some of the other hotspots. And then they can focus on, of course, the rivalry with China. So that's been part of the reason why they've been a little bit anxious to get a pact, to get a peace deal.
And what could be the long-term consequences of accepting or rejecting the peace proposal for Ukraine? Let's say, for example, Zelenskyy rejects the proposal. What happens next?
Well, unless he's got assurances from the West, from the Europeans, that they're going to help arm him and help him with aid, it's going to be pretty tough for him. But I still think if he gave into the peace deal, it'd still be going to be very, very tough for him. So he might decide he wants to fight and get some more support from someone other than the United States, and see to what extent they're going to deliver. But again, as we've said, some of the pressures on Europe economically have meant that they've been reluctant to back Ukraine perhaps as much as we thought they would.
Yeah, very much so. All right, appreciate your time, Professor Tim Harcourt. Thanks for joining us on Ticker.
Thanks very much, Aaron.